A few weeks ago, I shared this reel slash TikTok, and here's what it said. It says, part of my autistic experience is having days where any sort of executive functioning feels impossible. In the past, I would feel so guilty and ashamed. Now I'm learning to embrace these days and let myself fully rest without any expectations. I've learned that for me as an autistic person, rest is actually one of the most productive things I can do. And I shared this because my journey of discovering that I am on the autism spectrum has been really helpful for me to understand what my limits are, what my capacities are, what things I have the energy for, and then what things really drain me and what things I just don't have the capacity for. And in the past, I would push myself and I wouldn't realize that I was in a period or a state of burnout or just complete exhaustion until it was too late. Until I literally could not get out of bed in the morning, or until I would be so overloaded that my brain and body would shut down, and then I would have an autistic shutdown, what I know now to be an autistic shutdown. Or even sometimes I would have meltdowns just from being so overwhelmed and not really knowing what was going on. And I shared this post as a way to kind of first document my journey of my self-discovery and my self-understanding, but also to sort of be a permission slip for other neurodivergent people out there who might feel guilty for resting or taking time to rest, because I certainly have been there so many times. I think learning that I am on the autism spectrum definitely helped release some of that guilt and release some of that shame. It didn't get rid of it completely, because we're constantly being reflected that we need to be working, or if we're not doing anything productive, that we're not worthy. And these things are constantly shown to us in society, which is very, very harmful. Not just to our self-worth, but to our actual health, our physical and mental health. And there was a comment on there, and I thought it was really interesting. This person was essentially saying that my post shows how privileged I am to be able to rest. And I'm kind of there's a lot of different sides to this that I can see where they're coming from, and I can absolutely understand that unfortunately the way our society is set up, we have to work in order to survive, or we have to have some form of income in order to survive. And for many of us, that is needing to work, or not being able to take certain days off and to take certain time off. And that's one side of it. And that is totally valid, and I absolutely recognize that. And then there's the other side of it where I'm kind of I think it's the opposite. It's a privilege to not have to rest. It's a privilege to not have to constantly be aware of how much capacity do I have? What are my limits? How overwhelmed am I today? I think that, and I put that in the post, I think that as an autistic person who gets overwhelmed really easily, who does get fatigued very easily just from all the different things, sensory overload, socializing, just constant stress and overwhelm, rest is actually one of the most productive things that I can do. Because if I allow myself the time I need to rest, say it is one of those really hard executive functioning days where I've tried to get up, I've tried to do those daily tasks, and then it's just not working. There's just it feels like there's a huge barrier between the thought of me doing that task and then like me actually getting the power to be able to do that task. And if it is one of those days and I like try to keep pushing and I try to keep pushing and I try to keep pushing, that's what leads me to burnout. That's what leads me to a shutdown, or sometimes even a meltdown if I am really overwhelmed. But by me taking the time to rest, pausing, taking a step back, realizing that these tasks that I had planned for today, like they can wait. It's okay. Taking that time to rest is productive, because if we're looking like kind of long-term, zoomed out, I'm actually able to get more done if I take that time to rest in that moment, as opposed to like trying to push through, not being able to give it my full effort, and then burning out for a much longer period than if I had just taken a few hours or sometimes even like a full day to rest. And it's very interesting because it kind of leads to like the conversation of like how we can accommodate ourselves as autistic people. And for me, like accommodations are not a privilege. Accommodations are just ways for me to be at like an even playing field with everyone and with like my life. My accommodations help me stay in balance. So like I said, I don't burn out. So I don't get so overstimulated or so overwhelmed that I like literally cannot function. And I just kind of wanted to like make a video to share my thoughts on this and to also hear your opinion on this. Because like I can see both sides. I can see how like I before I even knew I was autistic, I knew that I needed to be self-employed. Like I needed that autonomy over my schedule. Looking back, it's like, how did I not realize I was autistic at the time? But I always wanted to have that autonomy over my schedule. And I wanted to be doing things that like I actually was really interested and really passionate about. And so I knew that from high school, and I have worked to get to this place in my life now where I can be fully self-employed. And so I do see it like, yeah, it's a privilege that I can take a day off if I need it, but also like I've put in a lot of work to get here. And also it like it goes back to the other side where it's like I would think it's actually a privilege to not need to take a rest day if I'm having a hard executive functioning day. Wouldn't that be the privileged thing? Because then, like, I don't know. I'm really curious, like, what your thoughts are on this also. Like, it would be a privilege to not need these accommodations, right? What these accommodations do is they help us so that with our disability or with our differences or with our challenges, that we're able to create like an environment, an ecosystem, and lifestyle that allows us to thrive more often than we're just trying to survive. Like I tried my whole life, like I said, I didn't know I was autistic, and so I didn't know about these accommodations that I could utilize. I didn't know that if I'm having one of those hard executive functioning days, that it means I need to take a pause back and to actually rest. I didn't even know what the signs were of that until it was too late. And I was constantly just trying to survive. I was constantly like in a state of overwhelm. And if I wasn't in a state of overwhelm, I was either having a shutdown or I was burnt out, where I just felt like this was all I could do, just lie there frozen. And now that I realize some of these things, and now that I've built sort of like a toolkit of different accommodations that I use to help myself in various aspects of my life, rest being one of them, I see now that like these things help me so much. And without these things, I'm not sure if I would be here today, to be honest with you. These things not only help like my autism, but they also help my mental health. They help my physical health. And so from my perspective, I would see it as it's a privilege to actually not need these type of accommodations. Because like I said, as an autistic person who deals with a lot of overwhelm, whose brain is like always taking everything in, who gets tired and fatigued really easily, rest is one of the most productive things that I can do, because if we zoom out, look at the bigger perspective, based on just pure productivity, I'm able to be much more productive. I'm able to get much more done if I take that short amount of time of rest, as opposed to trying to push through to the point where it's too late, and then I need like at least a few days, probably a week or longer, for me to get back into that flow of things again. So rest is one of the most productive things that I can do. And for me, it's not a privilege, it's a non-negotiable. I need it for my physical and my mental health.